Let me ask you something real quick. Have you ever trusted someone so much that the thought of them lying to your face felt impossible? Like, not even a remote thought in your mind? Now, imagine if that person was your family doctor. The same man who held your mom's hand through her final breath. The same man who sat at our dinner table like blood, not just friend. Would you question him? Or would you look the other way, like I did? And by the way, before we dive in, I want to know where you're watching from. Drop your country or city in the comments. And if you love real, emotional stories that dig deep into trust, family, betrayal, and the quiet kind of heartbreak that doesn't make noise but never leaves, type 1 in the comments. But if you don't, type 0. That way I'll know exactly what kind of stories you want more of. Now, when I pulled up to my brother Malcolm's house that weekend, I had no clue I was stepping into a storm that had been building for months behind closed doors. It was supposed to be simple, a quiet family visit, just like old times. Some baked bread, some whiskey, that old playlist Malcolm always blasts when he's cooking. And the laughs? Man, they were real. That kind of deep belly laugh you only get when you're around people who know you, people who remember who you were before the world hardened you. And there was Warren. Dr. Warren, the man who practically watched us grow up. Same soft smile, same steady hands, same stories about our mom that made us laugh and tear up all at once. We trusted him like we trusted the walls in that house, like he was a piece of the family's soul. I mean, how could we not? He'd been there through everything. He even helped write parts of our parents' will. But what I didn't know was that he had rewritten more than just memories. Looking back now, I wonder if the signs were always there. But when the air smells like nostalgia, and the people around you wear faces you've loved your whole life, it's easy to miss the quiet lies whispered through smiles. Stick with me, because what happened next didn't just shake my trust. It made me question everything I thought I knew about loyalty, grief, and what it really means to protect the people you love. And hey, don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Alex Stories. Around here we don't sugarcoat the truth. We tell it like it happened, raw, real, and full of those moments that live rent-free in your chest. That first day back felt like slipping into an old sweater, warm, familiar, a little stretched in the right places. Malcolm and I stayed up late that night, sitting on the porch like we used to when we were kids, the same creaky wooden chairs still there. He pulled out an old photo album, the one Mom used to keep under her bed, pages full of Polaroids and finger smudges and memories that hit like a soft punch to the chest. We laughed about the time I got my fishing line caught in Dad's hat, and he made me walk home 3 miles just to teach me a lesson. We remembered the 4th of July when Malcolm burned off half his eyebrow trying to light fireworks early. Dad was furious, but he couldn't hold the laughter for long. It felt good. It felt safe. I hadn't laughed like that in a long time, and I could tell Malcolm needed it too. The next morning, Dr. Warren showed up right on time, just like he always did. Sunday lunch, his tradition with our family for years. He brought that same bottle of red I always loved, the one I used to sneak sips of back when I thought I was slick. He smiled when he handed it to me and said, "Figured you'd still like this one, huh?" And I don't know why, but that small detail, him remembering, it got to me. Not in a big way, just enough to notice. Like a faint tap on the shoulder you don't turn around for, but you feel it. Lunch was easy. Too easy. Warren was his usual self, sharp, funny, never out of place. He made Malcolm laugh so hard at one point, he almost choked on a chicken wing. And then there was that moment, just a split second, when he and I locked eyes after laughing about something stupid. I think it was that time Mom accidentally burned a hole through the couch with her straightening comb, and blamed it on Malcolm. We both cracked up, and then he looked at me, just long enough for me to notice it wasn't just a laugh. Or maybe it was. I don't know. But I remember the warmth rising to my neck. Later that evening, Malcolm headed upstairs to take a nap, and Warren stayed behind to help me clean up. It was just the two of us. The kitchen smelled like lemon soap and leftover gravy. I was drying the last plate when he asked about Mom's final days. Not the medical stuff, but the hard stuff. How I felt. How it changed me. Most people skip over that part, you know? They avoid the real questions. But Warren leaned in. Not physically, emotionally. He listened like someone who genuinely cared. When I got a little choked up talking about that night, the night I held her hand until her breathing stopped, he reached over and placed a hand on my back. Firm, reassuring, steady, just like he used to do when I was a kid with a scraped knee or a busted lip. We sat outside later that night, just the two of us. Porch light buzzing above, the crickets doing their usual song in the grass. We didn't talk much at first, just sat with the quiet. Then he started talking about his regrets, the patience he lost, the marriages that didn't work. And I talked too, about feeling stuck, like I was always the one expected to keep it together, to be the strong one after mom and dad were gone. Somewhere in that silence between our words, I felt something I couldn't name. Nothing happened. Nothing ever crossed a line. But there was a closeness, a shared weight, like two people carrying the same invisible load. When we said goodnight, I noticed he hesitated before walking to his car. He gave me this look, not intense, not inappropriate, just human, tired, familiar, like he saw something in me he wasn't expecting. And honestly, I felt the same way. I didn't think much of it at the time. Not really. Or maybe I did. Maybe I just didn't want to admit it to myself. But that night, as I lay in the guest room with the ceiling fan humming above, I replayed everything. The laugh, the hand on my back, that look. It was probably nothing, I told myself. Just a long day, just emotions, just grief. But even then, something had already started shifting, quietly, slowly, and I had no idea what it would turn into. The next morning, something felt different, not loud or obvious. Nothing you could point at and say, that's it. No, it was quiet, the kind of difference you only notice when everything else is still. I came downstairs early, before Malcolm even woke up, just to grab some coffee. And there was Warren, already sitting at the kitchen table, reading the newspaper like it was his house too. He looked up when I walked in, gave me that same easy smile, but this time, his eyes lingered, just a little longer than before. Just long enough for me to notice, and pretend I didn't. "Mornin'," he said, his voice low and calm, like it hadn't even cracked from sleep. I nodded, trying to act normal, but my hand trembled just slightly as I poured the coffee. Not from fear, just something else. Something I couldn't name yet. The day went by like any other. Malcolm ran errands. I stayed back. Warren floated in and out, helping with little things, making himself useful. He was always like that. Helpful, observant, present. But I started to feel it then. A shift in how I reacted to him. The way I caught myself glancing when he wasn't looking. The way I felt when he walked too close behind me in the hallway. The way his cologne stayed in a room after he left, and how I hated myself for noticing. That night, after dinner, everyone drifted off again. Malcolm turned in early, said he had a headache, and I stayed up. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't sit still. Warren came back down a little later, barefoot, holding 2 mugs of chamomile tea. He offered me one without saying a word. Just held it out and nodded like he knew I couldn't sleep either. We sat in the living room with only the lamp on. Soft yellow light filled the corners of the room, made everything feel a little more fragile. He talked about his late wife. I listened. I told him about a time Mom sat on the kitchen floor crying after Dad left for a business trip, and how I was too young to understand what loneliness looked like until that moment. He didn't say anything for a long time after that. Just looked at me, like he was seeing something no one else had. And then he said it. Not loudly, not dramatically, but it landed heavy. "You carry so much, even in silence." I don't know why that broke something in me, but it did. Because no one had ever said it. And he wasn't wrong. I carry everything. Always have. For my family. For myself. For people who never asked how I was doing. And here he was, seeing it, speaking it, holding it. He didn't touch me. He didn't move. But his presence felt close. Too close. And I didn't move either. I just sat there, tea in hand, pretending not to feel the way my chest tightened. Not in fear, not even in shame, but in confusion. Because suddenly, he didn't just feel like a family friend. He felt like a mirror, like something dangerous in a gentle disguise. I remember thinking, it's probably nothing. He's family, almost, right? But my breath told a different story. So did the way I couldn't fall asleep that night. So did the way I kept wondering if he felt it too. That was the beginning, not of something physical, but of something far harder to admit. A feeling, an undercurrent, a fog I couldn't shake. I told myself it was grief, that I was vulnerable, that it would pass. But even then, deep down, I knew better. I knew what it meant when your heart starts leaning toward a person you were never supposed to even look at that way. The next evening, the weather changed without warning. One minute it was just a still, heavy heat, the kind that makes you feel like something's about to shift. And the next, clouds rolled in like an army. I was standing by the window when the first rumble of thunder hit, deep, low, like the sky was clearing its throat to say something no one wanted to hear. I watched as rain started tapping the glass, first gently, then harder, like it was racing toward a climax. And then, everything blinked. The lights flickered once, twice, then died. Just like that. The whole house sank into silence except for the storm and the quiet tick-tick of the old clock on the mantel. Malcolm was already asleep upstairs. It was just me and Warren in the living room again. I was about to go grab my phone flashlight when I noticed he'd already lit candles, like he was waiting for the moment. Flames danced in the shadows, casting these soft, flickering shapes on the walls. It should have felt comforting, familiar. But there was something else in that silence. A tension so thick I could have reached out and touched it. He handed me a blanket, just one. Said, "You look cold." I didn't argue. I sat down beside him on the couch, the storm humming outside like a warning I didn't know how to interpret. We didn't say much, we didn't need to. The way our shoulders touched beneath the blanket said more than either of us had the courage to speak out loud. And the longer we sat like that, the louder the silence became. My heart didn't pound, it whispered. It whispered all the things I knew I shouldn't be feeling. The comfort, the calm, the pull. I remember thinking, I should have moved. I should have said something. But I didn't. And he didn't either. That stillness between us? It wasn't empty. It was full of everything we wouldn't admit. The candlelight made his features softer, more human, less like the family doctor and more like a man carrying his own quiet storms. Our knees brushed once, and neither of us pulled away. It was barely a moment, but it stretched long, like the house itself was holding its breath with us. And then, just when I felt the weight of the moment start to press too close, too real, a knock. Sharp. 3 taps. Not hurried, but firm. We both turned at the same time. I didn't even realize how close we'd gotten until I felt the cold air fill the space between us as we stood. Warren moved first, grabbing a candle, heading to the door. I followed, heart still caught in my throat. Standing on the porch, soaked from the rain, was Mr. Lane, the lawyer. Early. Way earlier than expected. His eyes flicked between us. He said nothing about the power outage. Nothing about the storm. Just stepped inside, shook the water from his coat, and said, "I need to speak with you both. It's about your mother's will." And just like that, whatever that moment had been between me and Warren, it vanished, replaced by something colder, heavier. Something I didn't understand yet but could feel in my bones, like the storm had only just begun, and the real lightning hadn't struck. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. The storm had passed, but everything felt wet. Not just the air. Me. My thoughts, my skin. Like the night had left something on me I couldn't shake off. I didn't wait for breakfast. I didn't wait for Warren to stir or for Malcolm to ask how I slept. I slipped out of bed, pulled on a hoodie, and stepped out into the misty air like I was trying to outrun something invisible. Something that had already taken root. By the time Warren came downstairs, smiling like nothing had shifted, I was already at the sink rinsing out a mug I didn't plan to use. He offered to make tea. Chamomile like he always did. I said I wasn't thirsty. He made a joke, something about how grumpy I was without caffeine. Normally I'd play along, nudge him with a smirk, say something sarcastic back. But this time, I didn't even look up. I heard his tone change then. softer, like concern was trying to tiptoe into the room. "You've been distant," he said. "Did I say something wrong?" And I wanted to say no. I really did. Wanted to brush it off and pretend I was just tired, or distracted, or not myself. But the truth was, I didn't know anymore. Was it something he did? Or was it something I felt? Something I wanted so badly not to be true? My silence must have said enough, because he didn't ask again, just nodded, quietly, like he understood more than he was letting on. Malcolm was in the garage when Mr. Lane, the lawyer, asked if we could talk alone. I followed him to the study, the scent of old books and lemon wood polish clinging to the air like secrets. He shut the door behind us, looked at me with a weight in his eyes I wasn't ready for. "There's something about the will," he said slowly. "Something that doesn't sit right." I turned toward him, eyebrows knit. "What do you mean?" He opened the file, carefully like it might bite. "Your mother updated her will just a few days before the stroke, but the thing is, she didn't tell anyone, not even me. And she always told me. Every change, every adjustment, she'd insist I print it in triplicate. She hated secrets." My breath caught. "It was signed here," he pointed, "but there's no stamp, no seal, and there's a detail missing, a very specific phrase she always included. Every time." I leaned in. "What phrase?" Mr. Lane glanced at the door like he was making sure we were still alone. "She always wrote in her own words, 'For the love of my sons I divide my heart equally.'" I stared at the paper. It wasn't there. And just like that, a chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the storm outside. I looked back at Mr. Lane. "So who wrote this one?" He sighed. "That's the question, isn't it?" And in the back of my mind, behind the guilt, behind the discomfort, something darker started to rise. A suspicion I didn't want. One I didn't even know how to name yet, because the only other person my mother trusted enough to handle legal things in private was Dr. Warren. The rain hadn't let up. It was softer now, but steady, like it wasn't in a hurry to stop. The kind that makes you stop pretending things are fine, makes everything feel slower, heavier. Malcolm had stepped out to pick up something from town, said he'd be quick. That left just me and Warren. Again. The power was back on, but we hadn't turned on the lights. There was something comforting about the dimness, the golden hue from the lamp in the corner, shadows flickering against the walls like ghosts that had nowhere else to go. I was sitting at the edge of the couch fidgeting with a coaster, spinning it, slowing it, spinning it again. Warren was by the bookshelf, arms crossed, eyes studying me more than the spines of the books. And then he sighed. Not the tired kind. The confessional kind. The kind people let out when they've been holding something in way too long. "I've known you since you were a kid," he started. His voice was quieter than usual. Not doctor voice. Not family friend tone. Just human. Watched you grow into this man with opinions, convictions, all that fire in you. He walked a little closer but didn't sit. But somewhere along the way, I started seeing you differently. Not like a kid anymore. Not like Malcolm's brother. I shouldn't say that. I really shouldn't. But I need to. I didn't move. Couldn't. My chest tightened. My throat dried up like it forgot how to swallow. My mind was racing, screaming, throwing words I couldn't form out loud. Because what do you say to something like that? I tried to laugh, nervously, but it came out wrong, sharp, like a broken instrument. "Warren," I started, eyes locked on the coffee table like it might split open and swallow me whole. "I think about you too, but not like that." Silence. I swallowed, finally. "At least, I don't want to. I don't want this to be a thing. You're..." I looked up at him then. His face was still. Honest. No smirk. No charm. Just that rare expression people wear when they finally stop hiding. "You're part of this family," I said. "You were there when my mom was sick, when she couldn't speak anymore. You were the one who stayed." My voice cracked. "I don't know what I'm feeling, Warren. Half the time I don't even know if I'm angry at you or grateful or both." He finally sat across from me, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. But he didn't say anything. Just nodded slowly. like he understood the mess I was spilling, the confusion, the shame, the questions I was still too scared to ask. No one reached for anyone. There was no touch, no crossing of lines, just the unbearable weight of two people, breathing in the same small room, with truths too big to contain. The clock ticked. The rain whispered against the windows. And somewhere in that stillness, I realized something. Sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't what someone does to you. It's what they awaken in you. The part of you you didn't know was still alive, or how far it would go to feel seen. And I knew then, something had changed forever, even if we never spoke of it again. I didn't sleep that night. I laid there, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling while the fan spun lazy circles above me. The room felt too warm, even with the windows cracked open. And no matter how many times I shifted under the covers, my mind wouldn't shut off. Everything felt louder in the dark. The creak of the old floorboards, the soft patter of rain still hanging on. Even my own heartbeat seemed to echo. Warren had gone to bed hours ago. I could still hear the hum of his white noise machine down the hall, the same one he always traveled with, the one I used to joke about. It suddenly felt like a wall between us. And Malcolm, well, he hadn't come home yet. He'd called around midnight, said he ran into a friend at the pharmacy and decided to catch up over drinks. That wasn't like him. But nothing about that night felt like it was like us anymore. I sat up, swung my feet onto the cold floor, and I knew. I had to leave, not because I wanted to, but because staying any longer would blur the lines beyond repair. The emotions, the silence, the stolen glances. It was becoming too much, too loud. So I moved quietly, didn't even turn the lights on. Just grabbed my duffel bag from the closet, packed the few things I'd brought, my toothbrush, the sweatshirt I stole back from Malcolm's drawer, a book I hadn't touched since arriving. When I walked past Warren's room, I paused. The door was slightly ajar, just a sliver. His lamp was still on, dim, warm, glowing, like a question I didn't want to answer. I didn't go in. I walked past it like it didn't pull at me. Like part of me wasn't begging for one last word, one last conversation, one last anything to make sense of what we'd both left hanging between us. But no, I couldn't. I wouldn't. I went to the kitchen, took a piece of lined paper from the drawer, found a pen, and wrote a note. Short, honest, unfinished. Malcolm, something isn't right, and I need time to think. Take a look at the old will. Something's missing. Something important. I don't trust what's been said. Or who said it. I didn't sign it. He'd know it was from me. As I slipped out the front door and closed it behind me, I stood there on the porch for a long minute. Just breathing. Just listening. Letting the early morning mist settle on my skin like a warning. Or maybe a blessing. The driveway was still slick with rain. My car sat there, fogged up, waiting like it knew I'd come to this decision hours ago. I slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and didn't look back at the house until I hit the corner. Even then, I only glanced. I wanted to stay, to fix things, to understand. But the truth is, the deeper I stayed, the more I lost sight of what was real, what mattered, what was mine. And sometimes, walking away isn't weakness. It's the only way to survive. The road was quiet. The kind of quiet that wraps around you like a blanket, but not the comforting kind. The kind that weighs on your chest. Trees blurred past on either side, dark and tall, standing like silent witnesses to everything I'd left behind. I didn't have music playing. Didn't want it. Just the hum of the engine and the occasional swish of tires over wet asphalt. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than they needed to, like if I let go, even for a second, I'd fall apart. Somewhere between mile marker 46 and that old gas station with the broken neon sign, my phone lit up on the passenger seat. Warren. I didn't pick it up right away. Didn't want to. I just glanced and kept driving. 5 minutes later, I pulled into a rest stop. Shut off the engine. Just sat there, breathing, trying not to feel anything. But curiosity, or maybe weakness, eventually won. I reached for the phone, opened the message. It was short, no emojis, no dramatic punctuation, just words. You weren't wrong, I felt it too. But I lied about the will. I panicked. I'm sorry. That was it. No explanations, no follow-up texts. Just the truth, dropped like a stone into a quiet lake. I read it again, and again. The screen stayed open long after I stopped seeing the words. I wanted to be angry, wanted to throw the phone onto the dashboard and curse his name, but I didn't. Because I wasn't angry. I was tired. Tired of wondering what was real and what wasn't. Tired of carrying a weight I couldn't name. Tired of missing people who were sitting right next to me. Of wanting something that should have never been offered. And most of all, I was tired of feeling like the villain in my own story. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to hurt him, but because there was nothing left to say. Sometimes, silence is the only thing honest enough to carry the truth. I turned the phone face down, started the car again, pulled back onto the road with headlights cutting through the mist. And somewhere between the cracks of my chest, I let the ache settle in, not as punishment but as proof. That it happened, that it mattered, that I walked away, before I lost myself completely. Some people hold power over us not through what they say, but through what they almost said. Through glances that linger too long. Through truths that hover just behind the teeth, never spoken but always felt. And sometimes, the line between loyalty and betrayal, it's not a mile wide. It's one breath, one decision, one moment where your heart says stay, but your conscience says go. It's been 3 months since I left Malcolm's house. Since that stormy night. Since Warren's message. He never wrote again, never called, and I never reached back. But I think about it more often than I'd like to admit. Not about what might have happened if I stayed, but about what almost did. There's a strange kind of grief in walking away from something that was never real enough to hold, but real enough to hurt. And I still ask myself, was I wrong? Was I wrong for craving honesty in a house full of half-truths? For needing to be seen, just once, as more than the quiet brother in the background? Was I wrong for letting my guard down with someone who, for a moment, made me feel visible? Or was I just human? I don't know. But what I do know is this. I left before I lost who I was. Before I traded a lifetime of knowing myself for a moment of being known by someone else. That decision haunts me sometimes, but it also saves me. Now, when I drive past places that remind me of that week, a bakery that smells like the bread from Malcolm's kitchen, a man laughing in a voice that echoes Warren's, I feel something tug at me. But I keep driving, because the past is a powerful thing. But so is peace. So, let me ask you something, just between us. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have stayed? Reached back? Let the lines blur a little more? Let me know in the comments. I really want to know how you would have handled it. Type 1 if this story pulled at something in you, and 0 if it didn't, so I know how to bring you something better, something realer next time. And hey, if this stirred something deep, if it reminded you of choices you've made or ones you're still trying to make, subscribe to Mr. Alex Stories. We don't just tell stories here. We tell truths wrapped in silence.